All right, let's get this going.
The Army values, the Warrior ethos, coaching, and
I don't know why this has been screwing up like that. It's probably because I just got done doing a live stream. Let me do this trailer again because this is an awesome trailer.
The Army values, the Warrior ethos, coaching, and therapy. This is Warrior Leadership.
This is Warrior Leadership. I'm coming to you right here. This is JJ Hardy with Victory Leadership Coaching. DB will be here, but he's running a little bit late. But that's okay because he's doing great and wonderful things in his community, and I'm proud of that dude. He's making it happen. So today, before we get into ownership in our third series out of 5 of leading by example, I want to talk to you about my promotion. It's the last time I'm going to bring it up. So I'm going to talk about my promotion and I'm going to talk about my group. So my promotion is that if you get enrolled within the next 24 hours, so it's 6:04 p.m. Central Time in Iowa on May 29th. And if you within 24 hours, if you send me an email, jj@victoryleadershipcoaching.com, I will give you 25% off of the $600 price tag for my first time leaders course cohort that I have starting on the 4th of June. And in addition to that, I have a community. It's a support community for people leaders. I encourage you to join that. Please leave a comment below for either one of those things. If you want the first time leaders course, say discount. If you're interested in the community, say community, and I'll get you started. But you know what? The man of the hour just showed up.
What's going on, sir?
Hey, man, you know what? I am proud of you, brother. You are doing great, wonderful, fantastic, and amazing things out in your community.
I am, sir, man. I'm trying, man. All the glory belongs to the man upstairs, if I can say that, man. I've been running, but I couldn't miss out on this Warrior Leadership time, man. Got to get it in.
I was looking forward to it. I'm still looking forward to it, and we're here.
Let's go.
So we can start off with your promotion. I already told him we're going to talk about ownership, but I'm sure you're going to say something about your man cave unless you have another promotion you have going on.
No, I mean, that's pretty much Man Cave is, still looking to fill up the online support group. My in-person support group actually just closed today. I just got a call actually, man, about an hour before this call. That was the last one, man. We're 10 strong. We're getting ready to go in June. I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm excited, man, to do this in-person group, and especially because, I spent some money on an ad. My first time doing a Facebook ad, and actually got a call, man. So it was definitely worth it. So I'm excited, man.
Just like you always say, let's go.
Let's go.
So thank you for sharing your promotion. And again, if you have either one of those things, just put a comment below or send me an email, jj@victoryleadershipcoaching.com for the community or the course. Today, we're going to talk about ownership as a leader. And this is 3 out of 5 of our leading by example. Thanks, Michael. And he's probably talking to you, DB. He said, congrats.
Oh, thank you.
So the final video is going to be leading by example. And by the end of this, I need to find it. It's not scheduled yet, but I'll tell you what we're going to be doing next week. So ownership. I have one phrase to describe ownership, and that's taking responsibility for everything within your sphere of influence. DB, what do you have to say about that, my brother?
Man, when I think of ownership, I think of the serenity prayer. To be honest with you, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. I mean, when I was a kid and I was growing up, I used to always go to these like NAAA meetings with my mom and my stepfather, and I would hear that being drilled into these people, and they would just be all repeating it over and over again. And it's like, how do you not internalize that when you're sitting there listening to these people say this? And you know, to me, that it screams ownership. Own own your part of it. And so many times in life, it's easy to look outside of ourselves and blame other people, but ownership is about taking, looking at what role do I play in this and what do I have control over, which is very much in therapy we call that an empowerment model or a strength based approach, you know.
And you have to have strength in order to conquer any demon or overcome obstacles or whatever the case may be. So I like the way you said that. Strength is absolutely probably the key word there. Um,
Mhm.
so I also think of personal accountability and responsibility. Hey man, would you mind taking your microphone and just putting it down just a little bit? There you go.
Sorry about
Sorry. I thought maybe I was in an episode of something that I didn't want to be a part of there for a second.
Did I sound like Jaws?
No, it was like this.
Oh wow. Oh man.
But anyway, I'm not going to tell you what I thought I was in an episode of. It's not
Yeah,
where I
no,
want to be.
we'll save that for the after hours one.
Say, okay, yes, the freaks come out at night. Is that what you're saying?
There you go.
Okay. So no, but personal responsibility and accountability are kind of two of the two of the main things that I think of when I think of ownership. When I think of accountability, we've talked about that in the past already. That is when you say you're going to do something, you do it. But responsibility, when it's something that people rely on you to do, making sure you get it done. I think those are probably two of the main things, and some of those are not just what's on the exterior. When I think of responsibility and accountability, it's also big for yourself. A lot of people cannot hold themselves responsible or accountable.
Mm. Can't hold themselves responsible or accountable, huh?
Oh no, man! You said it already. They
Yeah.
like to blame other people on for
Yes.
everything.
Yes, and that, you know what? That I think that's the part that's very interesting because it's one of those things where, in my experience over the last just 20 years really of working with people, just even outside of counseling, those individuals who are the most resilient have gone through the most atrocious things in their life. And one of the hallmark are, benchmarks are taking ownership. And again, and because I've listened to so many different stories and people's narratives and things that they've gone through, I've just realized, like, wow, man, like these people have gone through this extreme suffering, but yet their mindset and them just taking even a little bit of ownership in something, because you know there's a lot of things that could happen to us as human beings that are honestly out of our control, and it really is not our fault. But yet when you still find a way to take some ownership over where you're going based on what happened to you, man, I think that's something to admire and something to get behind. And JJ, we were talking about this earlier, and I'm just gonna go there, brother. Like, you sent me a narrative this week, and that was personal, and I read it, and as I'm reading it, I'm thinking to myself, these are the kind of people I want in my inner circle, and that's why you are in my inner circle. And I know we both have kind of similar backgrounds, and we don't have to go around and harp on our past and on our stories or anything, and we're not looking for pity or sympathy for people. It's just a matter of, it's inspiring when you hear people go through stuff and then they grow through it. I say that in therapy all the time. Is like, are you going through it? Or are you growing through it? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm actually, so I said I'm turning that into a keynote, and I am,
Yes.
but it's not for, I mean, adults need to hear that stuff. That's not, I'm not saying that they don't, but I'm actually, I've already put together a calling list. I'm for within 50 miles of here, I'm going to be calling every high school and talking to the principal, and I'm going to be trying to get into as many high schools as I can to talk about how ownership and resiliency, and by the way, just absolute strength to push through and know that there's a better way is what it takes to succeed. Because I think, you know, from an ownership perspective, I think today's society needs to take ownership of something that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, to be honest with you. And I see it in my house with my 2 teenage kids, and I'm sure you see it with your son. And you know, it, it's they're really a victim of their environment, but they can get through it. In today's basic training in the Navy, so I was on a networking call the other day, and this gal was just retiring from the Navy. She was in the training division for new recruits, and they had to add social skills to the training program because they started doing team development stuff
Yep.
in basic training, and they said it was pitiful. They didn't know how to interact with each other.
Yeah.
But I'm not ignoring you, Michael. But yeah, I saw that you put something up there about Jocko. Yes. Yes. Own what you're control of. So here's what I think is a little bit different than what Jocko thinks about ownership. He says take responsibility for everything within your world. I say take responsibility for everything within your sphere of influence. And I say the word influence very specifically because guess what? There are some things that you cannot influence. And some people get so wrapped around the axle about trying to control things that they can't control. And it leads to issues. And it keeps people up at night, and that turns into insomnia and the whole 9 yards. And so there's actually an exercise that I help people that take extreme ownership with, and this is the whole reason why I say influence instead of everything within your world, which is what Jocko says. When people stay up at night worrying about everything that they have to do the next day, because it happens, it is a common thing. People are just so worried. Not everybody, control freaks. Yes, me too. I'm not going to put that one up there, Michael, and I think you know why, but good on you, buddy. No, but a good exercise to do this, and I've said this before, write down everything that's on your mind. If there's anything that you can do to take action on a certain number of items, take those things and put them on and number them as a 1. And then for everything else, you number it as a 2. And if there's something you can do in that moment, you actually do it. If not, you let it go and you go to bed. Because if you can't have any influence or control over a situation, why are you going to keep yourself up at night thinking about it?
I like that. That's a good strategy.
I didn't make that up. I had issues with that when I was younger, which is interesting because I can fall asleep in 5 seconds. But it drives my wife crazy. But somebody taught me that because for a while there, I had so many things on my plate that I couldn't sleep. It was keeping me up at night. I was accountable to so many different people for different things just because we had stuff moving around the globe at a rapid rate. And he said, JJ, just do this. The very first night, within 2 hours after I tried that exercise, I took action on what I could and left everything else go, and I went straight to sleep.
Yep. That's a fact, man. It's easy to overwhelm ourselves and to that point, I think that's why people walk away from ownership, because sometimes, I mean, if you really dig into that story even further, and we've all been there, there's this feeling of helplessness that comes over you when you looking at all those variables and all those things that you're quote unquote responsible for. But like you said, when you break it down and prioritizing, which I had a similar tool that was it's like a prioritization quadrants. And I think is that Stephen Covey that came up with that, where you basically, you list what's most important and urgent, and you shift things into the quadrants that are not as important and urgent. And so that helps you hyper focus on what you have control over, and now you can take ownership. It's hard to take ownership when you have all these things on your plate, which I think is why so many people, especially these days, there's a phrase that I'm hearing so many times with different people in different agencies, including the agency I work with, which is, I'm too busy. I think, when we say we're too busy, that's our way of kind of protecting ourselves from like work. But in doing that, are you not taking ownership of something that you actually are responsible for? Right. So we have these long job descriptions, and it's funny when you start challenging people for certain aspects of their job description that they, don't always do, because they're so used to and comfortable with the part that they kind of have control over. It's like, well, wait a minute, you own this process too, so you have to also do this. And so, pushing yourself out of that comfort zone and really taking ownership of, you know your role, your responsibility. That's, it's kind of interesting.
It is. And you know what? Nobody takes personal responsibility and ownership better than a former service member.
Oh man,
Because,
you can say that again.
oh, well, and it's only because, well, I don't know. Maybe it's not that way today, but so many years of combat has fed into this group of veterans that they had to be in combat. And it doesn't matter if you're way back with the beans and bullets or if you're up front putting rounds down range. Everything you do could have an effect on whether or not lives are at stake. And so a service member knows that getting that task done, even though you're not in combat anymore, now you're back in garrison, or now you're out of the military, and now you're way back in corporate America where everybody has their nose in the air and nobody wants to tell anybody else what's going on. Well, those people are different than the rest of the people in their work environment, and they do take responsibility because they know the things that they're doing have second and third order effects, and they try to keep everybody informed and make sure everybody has the information, because you never know when that's going to be necessary to get something done. And it's not out there. It's not trained. It's not anything. There aren't really conversations out there about ownership. There are conversations out there about, oh, this mofo passes the blame. But they don't talk about the opposite. They don't talk about the ownership aspect. Why is this person passing the blame? Well, a responsibility and accountability. Are they taking responsibility, and are they being accountable for themselves, and are they being accountable for their team?
Yep.
I thought that was Roosevelt. I think maybe, you know what, that was in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but Roosevelt, I think, said that too. You're right. I love Stephen Covey, man. He's great. That one book I reference all the time. I love it. But yes, so that's what, I could go on all day. We should have a talk one of these times that we're on here about the value of a veteran.
Yep. I think there's another piece of this too, man, that's important to know when you think of like blaming outside sources and that kind of being like someone's solution. It only ends up breeding like this resentment and anger for that individual.
Yes.
And I think, you can also add to that, you know, when you don't take ownership, when you actually step away from that, like, what are you saying to yourself when you know you should have owned the moment and you didn't? You
Yes.
know, because that's the question we could even pose to our listeners. Like, have you ever been in a situation where you knew you owned something, meaning you had to take ownership and you didn't, you averted it, and then you stepped away from that, and now there's this like, and I keep bringing it up, it fuels that defectiveness schema that we have when we're supposed to step up. You know, like it. And the best example I can give, you know, let's go back to the schoolyard with the bully. You know, you should have stepped up and punched the bully in his mouth because that's what mom and dad told you. Like, hey, if all else fails, you try to tell the teacher you went the normal route and that bully keeps on messing with you. You got to take ownership and you got to hit him in the mouth. And then you don't do it and you walk away from that encounter. And now
Gonna
you've
come
just
back.
internalized something about yourself. And so now you grow up in every situation that bully manifests. That bully manifests in, you know, other friends growing up. They manifest in a boss. And it's because you never dealt with the Goliath in your life. And you got to take ownership. When it's your moment, you got to own the moment. You got to
You're
take
right.
it, man.
You're right. You know, people like to give up on the first sign of rain. When they see rain, they quit.
Right. But what is that on Warrior Leadership? We know when it ain't raining, we ain't training. When it ain't snowing, we ain't going.
So let me teach you something that they taught us when I became a staff officer. And you know,
Yep.
they taught us this when I was a line NCO as well, but it wasn't harped on nearly as much.
Yep.
So for every situation that you encounter that you're getting ready to do, you know, you when you're making a plan, and this is planning, this is not in the moment, but you should do this in the moment too, because I now apply that to everything in my life. When you know that you have to get ready to go do something, there should be the way, there should be a course of action 2 and a course of action 3. So when you have, they call it COA 1, COA 2, and COA 3. When you have 3 courses of action for everything that you do, you always have a backup plan. And what does that do for those people that actually take that seriously? Well, whether or not it gives them a sense of ownership, I don't know, but they're a lot more prepared than those people that aren't. And the likelihood of that person having an excuse as to why they didn't succeed the first way is a lot less likely because they already have a COA 2 and COA 3.
I'm coming
It's
out with the
almost like
strategies today.
it's almost like you're keeping people from screwing up because you're making it happen for them.
Man, that's it. That's it, man. That's good. Hey, I want to read something to you that in this article, man. It says the stance of victimhood is a powerful and rigid one, as the victim is always morally right and forever entitled sympathy.
Where'd you read that from?
That is from an article that I actually found on. It's called Good Therapy. It's a website that um, you know, has these different articles for about concepts that come up in therapy, and this was a article on ownership, man, and just it was just a powerful statement. And for me, what stood out the most is that they're always morally right and forever entitled. That word entitled right there is what stands out to me the most. You're entitled to sympathy. Like, when did I and that's, I think, maybe from on warrior leadership we can talk like this, because when we think about warrior leadership and taking ownership as warriors, we know that, you know, this idea that we're entitled to something. We're not entitled to anything. The only thing that's guaranteed in this life are death and taxes. We're not entitled to anything as human beings. And when we have a sense of entitlement, entitlement is the enemy of ownership.
You know what? That's exactly right. And I think that the COVID generation has actually bred more entitlement because people were so comfortable with sitting around the house and not going anywhere. And you know, the reason that bred entitlement is because now they feel like they can do everything from home. You have all these, well, as we're streaming, you have all of these YouTubers out there But these guys are doing dumb stuff, right? They're building balloon castles and then wrecking them and playing video games and streaming and making money because people are watching them play video games. And how are they affecting the world?
There you go. There are they are, and by the way, we will be off this platform and in person coming soon. So cannot wait till we do that in-person live event because JJ, that's where it's at, man. I had an individual come in to me with therapy last week, as a matter of fact, and I asked a question on all my outcome questionnaires about, why'd you choose to come in person out versus teletherapy? And that individual was saying, how am I supposed to get over my anxiety if I'm doing that through a screen? I can hide from you through the screen. I was like, whoa. I sat back in my seat, JJ, because I'm like, I say it all the time to my colleagues who are pushing, online therapy and all these, big billion-dollar organizations, BetterHelp and all these big groups that are selling this idea that online interactions with human beings is the wave of the future. And for this man to come into my session and to be willing to, he understood that the first sort of sign that he's overcoming his fear and his anxiety is by stepping in the room with another man and addressing his issue and living life on life's terms and not hiding behind a computer screen. And I just applauded that man because you could see the like the fear in his eyes that I was going to respond to him maybe in a negative way because I'm another man. But the difference is because it's a safe place, and I was able to like explain to him that that's the embodiment of a warrior. And he looked at me and his eyes lit up and you could tell that he felt validated, he felt empowered, and he left out of that room. And I know he can't wait to come back into the next session because now he realized that false evidence appearing real is no longer has to keep him hostage, and he's taking ownership over his life, and he's not going to allow fear to stop him from conquering a mountain in his life, man.
I already love that dude.
Come on, man.
This is why
I love men like that.
I couldn't I say this with the most humble heart in the entire world, but that is the one reason why I could not be a therapist. I don't have patience for people that sit back and say, well, everything is happening to me. No, things are happening for you.
Oh,
fill your glass half up and figure out what you can do differently to make your situation better. Because guess what? At the end of every negative, there's a positive. That's science.
Right. Well, by the way, coach, everybody that comes into therapy, those people that you're talking about are what they're in the pre-contemplation state of change.
Yes.
And they're not really prepared to, and that's okay. There's no judgment on them.
No judgment.
Men like the one that I just described are the ones that, to be honest with you, make my job most rewarding because they are in the contemplation state of change. Because if a man picks up the phone and calls another man and they're willing to talk about their problems, they're actually in between contemplation and action, to be honest with you, because just to walk through that door takes so much strength and so much courage. Like, you are a warrior when you walk through the doors of my office and you say, look, here goes my problem. I can't figure it out on my own. Help me to be able to, and guide me to be able to go in the right direction. And when I see that, I always validate that man and say, you know what? You've already changed. You're already on and you say it all the time, coach, course correct. You've already course corrected by walking into this office. Do you know how heavy your legs are to walk into this office? It's like that. It's like running a 2 mile, and right towards the end, coach, where, those legs get heavy and you got to still finish and you push through. That's what it's like walking into a therapist's office and being open and vulnerable and sharing all that stuff. But I'm telling you, man, after crossing that finish line and the reward that you get, and then once they get to that point of that reward and they take ownership and they work through that process and they get there a lot quicker. And in that way, once they get to that point, now I can transition them over to you, coach, and you can give them that additional support and that guidance. And think about what you just said, the type of coach you are, by the time they come to you, they got to be ready to get in the game. They got to be ready to grow. It's it's not no, once I send you over to coach, it's time to get that business idea flowing. There is no room for doubt. Like, we getting ready to jump out the plane, baby. When we come to coaching, we're jumping out the plane. There's no more training to jump out the plane.
Hey.
We're jumping out.
Hey, stand up, look up, jump to the door, jump right out, and count to 4.
Yes. Woo.
Yes. No, but what I was going to say is I would never turn a blind eye to those people. That's why it's important to have a community in the first place, because everyone should know their own limits. So never turn a blind eye to somebody. Make sure that you hold their hand and get them to the person that can help them. There are many people. You saw that email that I sent you the other day. Mm-hmm. That email is why I can't be around people like that. And I think that that makes a whole lot of sense. But at the end of the day, I would never turn a blind eye to those people. I would just get them to the person that has the patience, the time, the effort, and the energy to handle the type of problems that come their way with that type of person. And you know what?
Coach,
I would walk away.
I have patience.
You do have patience. But you know what? I would pray on my way out the door. I'd probably hold their hand and pray with them if they let me, and then I would walk away. But a lot of people get really uncomfortable by that. So I would pray as I'm walking away.
Got you. Well, you know what? When we're talking about ownership, and it's great that, number one, we all have roles in varying degrees. And I think what you just articulated is there's this bridge that we talk about, and we know, between coaching and therapy. There's this synergy that happens when the right two people come together, and we know our strengths and we know our role, and we take ownership over that strength. Just like, I'm not going to try to get into the lane and be this person's coach, because you're probably more suited than that to me. And so we complement each other in that way. And so you take ownership over your own strengths, but you have to know who you are first to do that. You have to be secure with who you are before you start taking ownership of anything. How can you own something that you don't even know? You don't even know what your strengths are. Like, and the most important question I'll ask, literally within the first 2 sessions with a person, is, who are you? And every time, coach, every time I ask that question, the person tells me, like, man, like, that question had me stumped all week. Like, I was just sitting there thinking about it. And I'm like, that's the reason why you're having a hard time taking ownership of your life, because you don't have an identity, and you're in an identity crisis still. And just because, we're supposed to resolve that crisis in adolescent years, but come on now, how many of us actually resolve the issue of who we are in high school?
You're right.
Most people don't resolve it. And in my experience, I've had the fortunate experience to work with, people from literally the ages of like 6 years old all the way up into 80. And I've had elderly people still struggle with their identity.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. And so when you don't have a secure sense of identity, what are you going to take ownership of? So
I am an American soldier. I am a warrior and a member of a team. I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values. Anyway,
there you go. There you go.
Well, if I don't have another answer, I'll just give that one.
Yes.
But Michael's been dropping some bombs over here, and then we gotta wrap it up. But he said, technically, you don't even have to pay taxes. You can go to jail.
Well, that's true too, Michael. Absolutely. I rather enjoy my freedom, and I don't want to go to jail. No, thank you.
That is freedom for some people, man.
Well, maybe 3 hots in the cot, right?
That's right. And let me say, he has people pray for him all the time. And you know what? I will say this. When you're in front of somebody that is different than you are, like visually, everything, though they might not act different or think different than you don't know how to act for that. And so I think that when a lot of people are around somebody with a disability, they automatically feel something in their heart and they want to do something for that person. And if the only thing they have to do at that time is pray, hopefully you have a kind heart for those people, Michael, because they just need to do something for you. And you know what? It probably gets old that you have people wanting to do stuff like that with you all the time and show you special attention and stuff like that. But that's God speaking to them that they just need to be kind to you. But anyway, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Do you have any since we're talking about ownership, just make sure you're taking responsibility, everybody, for everything within your sphere of influence, and you don't pass the blame on to anybody. They want to fix it. It's fine. Ugh. But DB, do you have any closing comments for the group?
No, sir. I don't have any.
No? It was a good chat today. I really appreciate it. And Michael, thank you for throwing your comments in there as always. And thank you for being on my call earlier as well. That definitely made it a lot. It definitely made it a lot better. I really appreciate that. And everybody who's listening, if this information resonates with you, please like it, like the video wherever you see it, subscribe to it. That way you can receive notification when there's more on YouTube, because I'm going to be taking it off of here probably in the next 24 hours. But if it really, really, really resonates with you and you want to keep the conversation going, make sure you put a comment below this video wherever you're at so that we can respond to it and keep the conversation going. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into Warrior Leadership. We'll see you all next week. Have a good one.